Hello, my University of the East students. How are you doing today? You know what week this is? Do I have to look at my calendar? No. This is week three lessons. Remember, we had a week off for Columbus Day. So this is technically our third. Okay. We know the name of this course. Is it how to make pizzas? No. How to make japchae? No. It's a cross-cultural communication with a theme running through it about Christianity and the Bible. Okay. And hopefully you've been enjoying these interesting stories that I've selected from this interesting book. So, okay. Ready for me to go to the material? Since I can't see you, there's not much more to talk about. At least I can't hear you guys tell me anything. But hopefully everything's doing well. Okay. So let me go to the reading material. Share the screen. Here we go. Okay. I want to get myself out of there. We don't need to. I don't need to have overexposure. I'm not a famous person. Okay. So let me start the slideshow from the beginning. School code ENG 106, cross-cultural communication. Week 3. Okay. So the nice theme from this chapter is the benefits of translation. And you're going to find out that it is very important translating the Bible for other cultures to have an understanding in their language. It really, really helps them understanding. And it also has a little different perspective. You know, every language represents a culture. So, okay, hopefully we're on our way to enjoying this. Okay. So again, chapter 3, the benefits of translation. One of the questions related to finding meaning through communication is what language is being used? See, just what I spoke about. The different languages convey different meanings. Proper communication cannot happen if a person cannot understand what is being said. There has to be some form of comprehension, which is another word for understanding, even if that means using an interpreter. So this area is pretty self-explanatory, okay? The Diaspora, which loose translation is kind of like the empty land, the barren land that's out, you know, way out of your vision out there. It just goes on forever because you're not familiar with it. You have never traveled there. So it just seems like a barren land that goes on forever. So there was a time when the people of Israel were driven from their land and placed in other countries because they did not follow God. But this scattering, and again, scattering is when you throw things, a lot of things around. That's one meaning, like, let's say, it's common here that people will cremate the deceased. So maybe your father just passed away, your grandfather, and he prefers to be cremated. And then it's very popular here. Again, I don't know about your countries, but they request to have the ashes spread over the ocean because the father loved the sea. And that's where he feels his ashes should go, carrying his spirit. So that's scattered. Another way to use scattered is since there are so many McDonald's throughout the greater Los Angeles area, there's so many, we can say they're scattered. McDonald's are scattered throughout Los Angeles, even though now I would probably say there's more of a scattering of Starbucks, if you can believe it. Okay. So this scattering began in 586 BCE when the northern kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrian Empire. Assyria displaced the Jews and put them into the area northeast of the Mediterranean, the area we call Asia Minor. This dispersion or scattering of the people is called the Diaspora. They were scattered everywhere in all those barren lands going on, who knows where. In 722 BCE, the southern kingdom, Judah, fell to the Babylonian Empire, which also took over the Assyrian Empire. This extended the diaspora all the way to the Persian Gulf, the area now held, in present-day terms, by Iraq and Iran. Some of the Jews at this time also fled to Egypt, where they set up strong communities. Then Babylon was conquered by the Persian Empire, which spread Jewish communities as far east as the Indus River in Pakistan and India, and as far north as the Aral Sea in what is now Russia. The Persian Empire was defeated in turn by Alexander the Great of Greece. Much of the Greek Empire then fell to Rome. However, some of the Persian Empire rose from the ashes, specifically the land between the Persian Gulf and this brings us, again, for Wani and Yishwan, who probably bought the book, this brings us to the bottom of our first page, page 19, okay? Page 19. So, you know, that means I have to go to the whiteboard. So we go to New Share, Whiteboard. Get the pencil. And because this is a short page, I will be kind and I will only have one question for you. One and only question from page 19 is, proper communication cannot happen if what? So you tell me the negative that happens, and then that's why you can't have proper communication. So let me try to stretch this out here. All right, let me give you a minute or two to write that down and hopefully answer. I think those ghosts are coming back. What am I going to do to fight the ghosts? Wani, please tell me what to do. Well, how do you fight the Chinese ghosts in Taiwan, please? Okay. You should have been able to find that answer. It's a short page. So let me get the eraser. And repeating, proper communication cannot happen if what? So something bad happens, what is it? That's your answer. Okay. All right. So let me go back, share. We don't want to see my face. Back to the material. We ended down here between the Persian Gulf and so that brought us to the bottom of 19, and we're going to proceed now to the top of 20. Okay. So let me take us there. All right. So leads into the Indus River and lasted beyond the time of Jesus. The Greek and Roman conquests opened up the European continent to Jewish communities. They followed right along. Jewish people could not help but adapt to the cultures in which they were living. However, they also kept much of their own culture. Many of those who were exposed to Greek philosophy and culture adopted that culture, leaving behind some of their Jewish heritage. In many of the countries, Jewish people did not have a temple as a central place of worship. That's important to know. So instead, they built synagogues, which is like a Jewish church, in each community where they prayed, read the scriptures, the book of God, sang hymns, and observed the Sabbath. The synagogues provided the early basis of operations for Christian churches in the different regions of the world. Remember, Christianity came from the Jewish faith, sprung from it. And then we go to the early church. Even though Jewish people under Persian rule were allowed to return to the land of Israel, many chose to stay in the countries where they were making lives for themselves. Very few returned to the homeland. For example, there was a significant Jewish community within the Persian province of Babylonia. Between 200 and 600, the years, the Babylonian Talmud, which is a systemized commentary of Jewish law, was written and compiled near Baghdad. Jewish communities were widespread all over the place, as evidenced by the comments of the 1st century historian Josephus. Speaking about the wealth in the temple at Jerusalem, Josephus commented, "Let no one wonder that there was so much wealth in our temple, since all of the Jews throughout the habitable earth and those that worship God, nay, which means no, even those of Asia and Europe, sent their contributions to it, and this from ancient times." Okay, so a lot of people donated. Josephus also describes the extent of the dispersion during the 1st century. According to Josephus, the dispersed Jews were well thought of in the empire, which is good for them. The Jews also obtained honors from the kings of Asia, as far back Asia, wow, when they became their auxiliaries. For Seleucus Nicator made them citizens of those cities which he built in Asia and in the lower Syria, and in the metropolis itself, Antioch. This put the Jewish population in a great position. Those who later became Christians and began to spread the gospel held great credibility and influence with their neighbors and leaders. Now we're heading to the bottom of which would be page 20. During Pentecost, there were representatives from the dispersed Jewish communities, again, widespread, in Persia, Iraq, Turkey, which I don't know if they have turkeys there, and Asia Minor, Egypt, and other parts of Africa and Rome. Wow, that is really what I will say, dispersed. And that's stated in Acts 2:8 through 11. 3,000 of them were converted on the day of the Pentecost. Again, stated in Acts 2:41. They then went back to their own communities and established churches and Christian communities. So it brings me to the bottom of 20. So you know it's back to the whiteboard. And are you hoping I'm going to be kind and only ask one question? No, because that one, 20 is longer than 19. So I can sneak 2 questions in there. Hopefully that doesn't anger anyone, you know, like Kumbaya. So, okay, let me see. Next question. Okay, so Jewish people could not help but do what? So again, if I have someone like Temujin or Purevi, they're going to say, what? They could not help but what? Ride a bicycle or buy a hamburger? No, this is in reference of the, I'm staying with the same thing, the being dispersed. So once you dispersed these Jewish people to all these different countries, once they were there and lived there for a period of time, what is it that they could not help but do or doing? There's something that they had to do in the process of living in a foreign land. And you guys too. You guys stay here a long time and you become citizens, you will do the same thing. So I can't give you any more hints than that. Okay, so like I told you, I'm going to sneak in another question because it's a longer, 20 is a longer page than 19. So I have to be fair. Okay, so in this page on 20, it mentioned this fellow a lot, Josephus. So should be easy to find the answer. And the particular question is, Josephus said what about Jewish communities? What did he say about them? And the only hint I'll give you here is that he said very positive things. Okay, so don't look for, of his many comments on page 20, don't look for anything negative. Okay, positive. That's my hint to you. So let me stretch. Oh, touch those toes. Okay, stretch. All right. So let me give you a few minutes to write those down, and I'll make my markings that I've covered this material. Page 19 and page 20. Because we're going to do a little skipping next. I try to get you the most interesting parts and the most informational pages, not a page of boring stuff like what? Okay, so again, I reiterate, I hope everybody's doing well and happy. And now it's getting a little cooler, guys. especially in the evening and the morning, so that helps. It still can be a little hot, got to be careful, but in another week from today, it'll be Halloween will actually be gone, and then it'll be November, so that's the cooling start period. You know, that's what we got to look forward to. It's too bad nobody can talk to me. I was hoping somebody could talk to me. Ooh, lonely. Miss my students. Even though you give me a lot of trouble, right? Okay, let me go to the eraser. There should be enough time to at least copy these down. All right, repeating two. Jewish people could not help but do what? This does not have anything to do with making bagels, riding bicycles, or going to McDonald's. This has to do with as they went to a new country, lived there permanently, something's going to happen to them. They're going to have to do something. Really, you can't really control it. It just kind of happens. And like I said before, it's already happening to you guys. The longer you stay, it will continue. Okay? Happens to everybody. 3, Josephus said, what about Jewish communities? And please look for the most positive comment that you can find. That will be your answer. Okay. All right. So back to the new share, back to the material. So we ended down here at the bottom, Christian communities, which would be the end of page 20. Now we're going to skip a little here, okay? We're going to skip for Yishwan and Wani and whoever else has bought the book. We're going to skip to 23, okay? So we're going to go to 23. So move this. Okay, so it says translations. Again, this chapter is about translations and the importance of the language for the people in the different countries. So that brings us to the top of 23. Now I can proceed, right? All right. Since the ancient church was so widespread over Europe, Africa, and Asia, there was a need to translate the Bible into the vernacular language of the local communities. Yes. Like I said, different languages, different people, different meaning. As Justo Gonzalez points out, not only did this give access to people, excuse me, I guess I need more soju, to people who did not have access to the Bible before, it also became the people's book, no longer under the control of those who control society. And I'll give it a little meaning, I'll read a little bit more. The Bible was not to be relegated or kept only to a few people who could read an ancient language or foreign language, and who therefore would have all of the power within the church. So when the Bible started and people read, it was only, high-level people in the church and the priest. So a lot of people could not read, and then even people that could, the Bible was only for the priest to read. And if it was in another language, what could you do even if you could read? So these translations started giving power to regular folk, right? It says right here, power within the church. Right? So remember, the Bible is a pillar of the church, or a strong support point of the church. And whoever controls the biblical interpretation controls doctrine. This was borne out when Pope Benedict insisted that authentic Christianity had to be based on the Greek philosophical tradition, establishing the European intellectual model as the inevitable, which means you can't stop it. Remember, we say in the United States, there's two things that are inevitable in your life. One is paying taxes, and and one is death. You cannot stop either. So this intellectual model as the inevitable norm or normalcy for all future ages. The meaning of this is as follows. This meant that whoever wanted to interpret the Bible and remain in line with the Catholic Church had to use that method of interpretation, which was the Greek, and which used European culture as the standard. All other cultures had to adhere or stay by this rule, or they would be deemed heretical. And heretical means that you know, on a light degree means you're just against the church. On a heavy degree, you know, you're committing blasphemy. It could be you're almost like a witch or something. They just hate you so much. It is the epitome or the highest level of arrogance or ego to believe that one culture holds the key to the interpretation of the Bible. Again, this follows suit in the book talking about cross-culture. So that's why we're seeing in this chapter translations, different translations leading into cross-cultural meaning. This is why it is important for the Bible to be translated into multiple languages. Yes. Okay, so we've done like half of 23. So we're going to go to the bottom half. We've done the top half of 23. For my Taiwanese ladies, a little clarification. Okay, starting in the middle of 23. One of the first translations was of the Old Testament, the original Bible, not the new. Around 320 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt and founded the city of Alexandria. By 285 BCE, Alexander was dead, and his empire had been divided among his generals. Egypt was ruled by Ptolemy and his descendants, the people who came after. Ptolemy Philadelphus, the king of Egypt, was interested in literature and had a large library that filled with the latest writings. He maintained contact with many of the Jews living in Alexandria and was aware of their scriptures. He commissioned 70 men to translate the Hebrew scriptures into Greek so they could be placed in his library. Once this was completed, the Greek translation, called the Septuagint, became available to Jews in Alexandria. As the Jews grew more distant from their Hebrew culture and more Greek in their culture and speech, this copy of the scriptures became useful to them. We know that this translation was prominent during the time of Jesus and the apostles because many quotations from the New Testament reflect the Septuagint rather than the Hebrew Bible. Look at that. So we're at the very bottom of 23. This Septuagint was written in everyday Greek, not scholarly Greek. The same language used in the New Testament. Remember, we had the Old Testament at the top of the page? They rewrote it in the New Testament, and they rewrote it in everyday Greek, not scholarly, which was the language used for trade. Greek was the language used for trade in the world at that time, at least that part of the world. This allowed the Bible to be relevant or important. It's kind of a mix of important and useful to many cultures in the world, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, where Greek was, again, the language used for trade. Okay, so that brings me to the bottom of 23, where we skip to from 20. So, you know, I got to go to the whiteboard. Love that whiteboard. The new share. the whiteboard, get the pencil before one of my guys tries to steal it and then run away to Starbucks across the street. Okay. Brings me to question number 4. Maybe I'm being light on the questions today, who knows, or we'll do some catch up later with these longer pages. All right, here we go. 4. Why was it needed to translate the Bible? Oops, it's a the. I don't know why there's an R there. So why was it needed to translate the Bible for the local communities of that area? So we're always talking about the same area. Don't get confused and then say, did you mean this won't let me stretch it? Oh my. I wanted to, oh, there we go. Stretch Armstrong. That's probably it on the stretching. Okay, that's good. So again, it was important to translate the Bible for the local communities. So what was the reasoning behind this? That's your answer. Okay. So next question. 5. Okay, who controls church doctrine? And again, that's what we're talking about at the time, and it kind of overlaps into today, but it states right in the book who or which people or what group controlled church doctrine at the time. It goes along with a pattern, you know. It's just like they say now, who really controls government? You know, you say, oh, is it the president? Is it the mayor? Is it? No, it's the banks, right? The money controls the governments usually in all the world. So who controls the church doctrine, especially at this time? Okay. All right. And since this is even longer page, 23 than 20, I can sneak a third question in there. Okay. Please don't be too happy. I know you're happy that I'm doing this. Okay. 6. What made it possible that the Bible, I'm missing 2 words here, a preposition, a verb to be. Okay. Gotta push that. Okay. What allowed the Bible to be relevant? And again, that means important, useful. Oops, I can't stretch that one now, sorry. What allowed the Bible to be relevant to the many cultures in the world? There was one key thing, because again, what's relevant to you might not be relevant to me if we're from different countries, right? How I settle disagreements or problems, you know, in my country might be different. I'll give you an example. Actually, I learned this from someone in the class, but I won't say who it was. This was many years ago. I don't know if this person remembers the discussion, and I won't say the culture either. I'll just say two different cultures. You can have mine as an American culture, and then my student was Buddha, I won't say, right? But usually here in the United States, you know, when a man marries a woman, and then if there's a problem between, and that's common everywhere, there's a problem between his mother and his wife, right? The old mother-in-law. So here, traditionally, we're taught to defend our wife once we get married, especially if the mother-in-law is not being kind and she's not correct in what she's doing, right? And what's the reasoning for that? What's the rationale? It's because we say, well, if you just blindly, protect your mom and defend your mom, your wife might divorce you, and you're going to be alone. It's not easy to get another wife, right? So that's the rationale here. So my student from another country said, we always defend our mother, even if she's wrong. And I said, why do you do that? He said, because it doesn't matter if the wife wants to divorce us. We can always get another wife, but we cannot get another mother. So there you go. What's relevant to one culture might not be to the other. So here, just find what made it relevant to all. Okay, so that's our 3 there. Let me give you a few to write those down. And let me make my markings. I've just finished the questions on 23. So it looks like we're halfway done today. Yay, halfway done. All right. Again, that's kind of funny, the example I gave you, but here's another one. What Americans might think. They say, okay, so I blindly defended my mother, and even though she was wrong, because I can't lose my mom. And then my wife divorced me and ran away and married my best friend, or married Temujin, I don't know. So I have to be happy. And then all of a sudden my mom dies. Uh-oh, now I've lost both. Oh, yo. Not a good situation. Okay. So wrap it up on those 3. Also, by the way, I wonder how many of you are going to go out on Halloween and wear a costume or go to a party. I hope you all enjoy yourself, but keep it safe. I guess if you have a costume with a mask, you don't have to wear the medical mask. You're just Frankenstein or who knows who, right? Zombie. I don't know. Be a zombie that wears a mask. It's like, I'm dead, but I'm trying not to get COVID. So that's why I'm wearing a mask, even though I'm a zombie. Now, that might be pretty funny. Okay, so is that enough time for you guys? I can proceed to the eraser maybe. Okay. All right. So again, repeating on 4, why was it needed to translate the Bible for the local communities? It's very important. It's relevant to the whole chapter. I think ghosts are back here. They're just, I don't know what they're doing. They're making a lot of noises. That's really weird. It's kind of scary. Okay, 5, who controls church doctrine? Who controls church doctrine controls the church. Don't forget that. Men, who controls your wallet? Who controls your bank account? Your wife or your girlfriend. That's who. Don't forget it. You're lucky if you get even a quarter. Okay. All right. 6, what allowed the Bible to be relevant to many cultures in the world? So think about that at length. Okay. But it should be pretty easy. Common sense. Okay, 6 is gone. All right. We go back. New share. Material. We ended here at the bottom of 23, where Greek was the. So we're going to proceed now. Wani and Lishwan, we're going to proceed to 24. Okay, 24. Goes to, so 24, where it says prevailing language. We're at the top of that. So let's proceed. To use a different language or an academic language, see, I said it was not scholarly, was not academic, it was everyday Greek. That was not understood by the masses, which means the majority of the people, would have been detrimental or a negative effect to spread the word of the gospel. Charles Kraft states or says, such language, though appropriate in other times and other places, hijacks. So we all know hijack, like hijacking a plane. Now we have the term, unfortunately, in the cities, at least American cities, carjack. So it just takes it by force, is the meaning. So hijacks a message that might otherwise have been perceived or thought of as relevant and proceeds a perception of irrelevance. That's a lot of high-level words, a lot of what we call mumbo jumbo. So that's just a saying. If you put it in a scholarly way and then now few people understand it, then few people are going to understand the Bible. Again, it's going to kind of stay with the high-level church people and not the masses or the majority of the community. And that would be bad for the spreading of Christianity. Okay, hopefully you got that. Okay, continuing, the Peshitta was a Syriac translation of the Old and New Testaments produced in the 100s. So again, don't forget this word Peshitta. It's going to come up in some questions, okay? Giving you some advice, no charge until the end of the quarter. Then it'll be $50. Syriac was the language of the Asian church and helped take the message to people in Asia Minor and Persia. Around the year 170, Tatian, the Assyrian, translated the 4 Gospels from Greek into Syriac. He combined the 4 books into a harmony. Okay, my Korean students, don't think of your grandmother. Into a harmony of the Gospels called the Diaspora, which does not mean delicatessen, which placed the texts or books side by side according to subject matter. I think the ghosts are, I hear their bones shaking. The ghosts, oh my, there's some bones. A measure of the importance of Bible translation in the growth of the church can be seen in that it was not until Tatian completed his Diatessaron that Christianity spread into the Asian countryside. So not until that time. Where Syriac, and remember what Syriac is connected to, was the common language. Sometimes before 431, the New Testament portion of the Peshitta, there it is for the second time, received an upgrade through the efforts of Rabula, bishop of Edessa. He translated from the Greek into Syriac and separated. So I'm now proceeding to the middle of 24. So the Gospels into 4 books. Like the original Greek version, instead of using Tatian's combined Diatessaron, Philoxenus, bishop of Mabog, translated the entire New Testament, including the book of Revelation, which is the end times of the world, into Syriac in 508. A lot of strange words there and names, not easy, even for me. Syriac became the ecclesiastical language of the church. And basically that says what it says. It's like it became the religious language of the church of the East, as Latin became the language of the Western church for Western Europe. And that's what the Romans, you see these old movies, Gladiator. They're the people who came before the Italians, but they didn't speak Italian at the time. They spoke Latin. And Italian later came out of the Latin language, as did French, Spanish, Portuguese, and then one more, which people tend to forget, Romanian. That's why they're called the Latin languages or the Romantic languages. Okay. Without these translations, don't forget that without, the Church of the East would have remained closed to the common people. And the expansion of Christianity into those areas would have been greatly reduced. So instead of thousands and thousands, and maybe a couple of hundred without the translation. In the early 400s, Jerome translated the Bible into Latin. This translation is called the Vulgate. Also remember that. That'll pop up in a question. It's still around to this day, this word. And the Vulgate was the standard for the Catholic Church for centuries. It helped Christian culture and thought in Western Europe develop in Latin. By the 6th century, Persian missionaries were penetrating, which means going inside deeply, and then it says deep, so penetrating deep within the heart of Asia, so traveling deep inside, and finding it necessary to translate the scriptures into the languages of the people there. Yes, sir. Otherwise, here's a Christian Bible written in Latin. I can't read this. What's going on? Mola, I don't know. You know, it's just like I think traditional Mongolian is beautiful. It's kind of written from the top to the bottom, but I can't read it. Even though I think it's beautiful, I can't read one, even a letter. So, you know, people have to have that relevance. People have to have that translation and understanding. Some even managed to translate parts into the language of the Huns. That, you know, that's kind of hard. Here in the United States, we get a little confused. You really have to be a scholar to know the difference. They talk about the Mongols. They talk about the Huns. They talk about the Turks. And a lot of times in America, they just think they're the same things. Oh, the Mongols were the Huns. And then weren't they the Turks? It's like, no, they're different peoples. And I've been told by those people that there is some kind of blood connection. I've had Turkish people, and they're like, oh, Mongolians, we've got kind of the similar blood, and the Huns, but they are different groups with different languages, but come from very close areas. So there was the famous Attila the Hun, just like there was a Genghis Khan. During the 8th century, a leader named Adam rose in the church in China. He was a bishop and missionary, scholar, so famed for his knowledge of Chinese language and literature that even Buddhist missionaries came to him for help in translating their sacred books. What a talent, unbelievable. And that happens. I don't know what's the rate. I'll say occasionally. I'll keep it safe. I wouldn't say it happens quite often, right? So I'll give you a similar situation. I had a student, really funny guy from Iran, right? And they write in Arabic. He was a Muslim, and that's another language that when you write it, at least for Western people, it looks so different. It can look very pretty. So he told me, he said, there's a white guy, a Caucasian guy, and us Persians, we secretly go to him for his special calligraphy. Which is like Chinese have calligraphy and Japanese where they dip the brush into the ink or paint and then write on the white paper and it looks beautiful. And unless you're trained, most people can't do it. And again, it's usually, the highest Chinese scholar or Japanese scholar writes the best Japanese or Chinese calligraphy. But he says, this white guy, I don't know where he got the talent from, but it's so beautiful. We go to him, Persians, to pay him money for his calligraphy that we want to put on the wall. It looks so nice. So again, these talents can happen. Maybe Inkogen will teach me how to do Mongolian traditional calligraphy and I'll be famous for it. Who knows? So this Adam, that even the Buddhist missionaries came to him for help in translating their sacred books. Adam was not from the Church of Rome, but the Church of Persia. And he translated portions of, which brings us to the bottom of 24. So you know where I got to go next. I got to hit that whiteboard for those questions. There it is. Okay. This brings me to question 7. And what do you know? I told you guys to look at a certain word, right? And here it is right away in my first question on this page. So I'm giving you good hints today. Hopefully you pay attention. Like I said, I know there'll be a lot of students that are doing Candy Crush or texting their girlfriend on Facebook or sleeping. And then at the end, they're like, what was the question? Or, where do we get the information? I don't know what's going on. There you go. You just pay attention. I give you most of it. Oh, that's not 1. Sorry, fans. That's, I got to pay attention. That's 7. So what was the Peshitta, right? What was it? And I circled it twice, so that should be easy for you to find. So do you think I'm only going to give you one question on that long page 24? No way. I'm not crazy. You're going to have to do some worky poo. So again, this week's theme is without. Without this, that seems to be a lot of the questions here. So without this Syriac translation, remember Syriac's connected to the Peshitta. I can't tell you anything more, otherwise I'm giving you the answer. Without this Syriac translation, what would have happened? For the local people, for the spread of the gospel, what would have happened without it? Okay. It's probably pretty easy to figure out. Let me stretch. Can I stretch this all the way? Ooh, scabiddly. Okay, there you go. So let me give you a minute or two to write those down. Let me do my markings. 24 is done for my Taiwanese ladies. I've covered that material. Oh, do I have another? Oh, see, I'm being kind. I'm only giving you 2. Wow. I should have given you 3. I've got to stop myself from being kind. Okay, so I guess that's enough time. Let me grab the eraser. So repeating, what's the Peshitta? So again, if I have my funny guys in class, whether it's Mr. Hong, if Ken is back, not Lesuk is a gentleman, or Purdevi, or Young Peel, you might say, what is the Peshitta? Isn't that a pepperoni pizza? No, sorry, not. Please stay with the religious theme of the class. 8, without this Syriac translation, probably connected to 7. It'll help you get the answer. What would have happened in the world at that time and for the spread of Christianity? Okay, there you go. All right, let's go back to the material. So again, for my Taiwanese ladies, he translated portions of, which is the bottom of 24. So we're going to proceed to 25 now. Okay. We are on 25. We're at the top of 25. The Bible, such as the Gospels and Paul's epistles into Chinese to help his missionary endeavor. Excuse me, man, where's my vodka? To help his missionary endeavor in that culture. So endeavor is like a journey or a business, something that you have to do, but it's quite large. Other translations came during the Middle Ages. The Biblia Alfonsina was a Spanish translation by King Alfonso the Wise. I wonder, was he really wise? Of Castile in the late 1200s. I think I was around in the 1200s, barely. In the late 1300s, John Wycliffe produced one of the first English translations. Martin Luther translated the Bible into German during the Reformation in the early 1500s. So you see all these translations at different times. Cross-cultural people, 1200s, 1300s, 1500s, being translated by different people in different languages. English translation, German translation. Luther wanted the people and not just the priests, who I said the upperly scholarly folks only had the knowledge and ability to read the Bible. So Luther wanted the people, and not just the priests who knew Latin, to have access to the Word of God, aka the Bible. At that time, the Vulgate was the only sanctioned translation of the Bible. So that means there were other translations that people could get, maybe illegally. I'm not sure of the laws at the time. But as far as sanctioned or approved by the church, the Vulgate was the only one. In 1590, there was a translation into Hungarian, another language, called the Karoli Bible. Perhaps one of the best known translations is the 1611 King James Version. Now, for sure, I was around in 1611 because I remember doing a few things then. I think I was in high school. Because I'm just a little bit older than my students. A little bit. Joke. Okay. We're in the middle of 25. The translators all had one thing in common. They wanted to give the Bible to the people. That's the same reoccurring theme. Give the Bible to the people. Take it away from the scholars only. The Bible was originally in the language of the common people, writes Charles H. Kraft. Language that required no academic degrees, no knowledge of history to understand. So just to remind you, again, in your countries, I don't know. I have not been to a doctor in Japan or Korea. I did go to one in Singapore, but they spoke English. Here, doctors will write your prescription and medical terminology in Latin. So most people don't know any Latin. So you read it, you're like, what's going on here? So that's kind of a continuation of the thoughts of the time. So literacy, which means the ability to read, was a factor, as it still is in some areas of the world today. The common custom was for someone to read the scriptures to the congregants. So what that means is you go to church, maybe you can read, maybe you can't, you're literate or illiterate, they're going to read it to you. And that's it. That's the extent of your ability to actually study the Bible for yourself. Congregants are the people that go to church. And if they belong to a church, that's a congregation. This was true in the synagogue and in the early church. It was not until the printing press was invented around 1440 that literacy rates began to increase due to the availability of written literature. Before that time, most cultures dispensed information orally. So that tells you most cultures were of an oral ability only. A lot of them did not have writing. I think it was 62 or King Sejong invented the Hangukmal, the Korean language. Before then, Koreans had to write in Chinese. So, Korean was basically an oral language, right? So, some of your countries had the same kind of situation. Okay, so let's proceed to the bottom half of 25. The Bible was originally written in Greek and Hebrew. This might be a question on the midterm. Just letting you know. So again, repeating, vital information here. The Bible was originally written in Greek and Hebrew, which were easily understood by its first readers and listeners. However, as those languages became less popular, and as the gospel spread into areas where those languages were not known, it became necessary to translate the Bible by using the most accessible language possible. What do we think was the most necessary or accessible language possible? Was it Mongolian? Was it Spanish? Was it Tagalog? Let's find out. The translators of the King James Version asked, "But how shall men meditate in that which they cannot understand?" Again, if you can't understand it, I love the beautiful traditional Mongolian writing, but I cannot understand even one letter. How shall they understand that which is kept close in an unknown tongue? Tongue is an old word for language. It doesn't have to do with the actual tongue in your mouth, but what you speak. Each translator saw the difficulty people had with the versions that were available to them and chose to take the Bible back to where God intended it to be. God used very little technical language in the original. He used down-to-earth language that people could grasp easily or understand easily. The work of Bible translation continues today with the same goal of making it accessible to people so they don't need a degree in ancient languages or history to understand it. So there you go. God used very untechnical language, common down-to-earth language. It's only when priests and religious hierarchy started making the Bible and using these high-level words that people said, what are you talking about? So understand that. So finishing up on 25, a failure to communicate. Using translations is a great tool for reaching people with the gospel. But what are some possible consequences of failing to do so? Let us look at. So again, for my Taiwanese ladies, we have gone to the bottom of 25. So you know I have to go to the whiteboard. Gotta get those questions out. And how many questions am I gonna do on 25? I'm angry with myself. I'm being too kind. I wanted to snap 3 questions out, but I guess I'm only gonna do 2. Oh boy, getting weak. Question 9. Oops, I'm saying sanction, sorry. This is an easy one, a short answer for you guys. I'm being super kind. Here we go. In the 1500s, what was the only sanctioned or official translation of the Bible? It wasn't. So let me stretch here. I think that looks good there. All right. So sanction meaning official. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 here, but already I think we've reached 10. Usually I give you 16, right? I think that's what you want, or 20, I think. Young Peel wants 20. Okay, maybe I'll do it. Here we go. We mentioned this, I think, at the top of our reading of this page. Which languages was the Bible originally written in? Was it written in Mongolian and Korean, Japanese and Chinese, Spanish and English? Which languages was the Bible originally written in? So, give you a few to write those down. And let me make my markings. I've finished covering material up to 25. And again, I hope everyone's doing well. Getting close to Halloween. I wish I could find out what you guys are going to wear for your costumes. Would be funny. Would be fun too. I bet Pamela's going to wear a nice costume. Caroline, she'll probably be, oh, I'm going to be a nun. That's my costume. Have to be nice on Halloween. Okay, you guys got those two, 9 and 10? All right, let me go to the eraser. Going to 9, again, repeating in the 1500s. What was the only sanctioned translation of the Bible? I'll give you one more hint. So, one word. If I have Miss Kim from Russia, it sounds like big river in Russia. So that's the hint for you. You should be able to get it then. 10. Which languages was the Bible originally written in? Again, Korean and Mongolian, Japanese and Chinese, or Spanish, English. Okay, thank you. So back to the material. Get the new share. So we ended. Let's look at finishes page 25. And now we're going to proceed to 26. And I guess I'll let you know this is our last page for today. Yay! We're all excited. Unless you can call me really quickly and say, can we do 10 more pages, teacher? Yes. Yes, we can. But I got to get that phone call. So I'll be waiting for it. So we're at the top of 26. The Bible was originally written in Greek and Hebrew. Oh, there's an answer. Oh, I didn't move the page. Oh, sorry. But that you already got the answer. I told you it was at the top. Okay, yes, this is 26. Maybe our last page. What happened in the Arabian Peninsula? For more than 300 years, Christians lived in the Arabian Peninsula. But by the time of the Prophet Muhammad, who was instrumental in introducing Islam, 570 to 632, no translation of the Bible in Arabic could be found. Originally, Muhammad was open to the message of the Old and New Testaments, but without an Arabic Bible, he had no access to the true message and had to rely on fragments that did not adequately represent the truth. Some contend, or some argue, that if the Bible had been translated into Arabic, the religious history of that region would have been significantly changed. It probably would have preempted the introduction of Islam, because Islam, if you don't know, came after Judaism, and Christianity came after. In other words, people will reject the message if it is not in a form that they can understand and study for themselves. And again, that's the theme of this week's chapter. Is that if you cannot understand the message in a Bible written in a language you don't get or understand, you can't understand and study for yourself, and it's going to be lost, you probably will not continue. Kraft notes that if biblical content is presented in such a way that the receptors, the people who read it, do not perceive it or understand it to be relevant, we've gone over that term, the verdict or result concerning communication is that the Bible is not relevant to them, not important to them, not something they can understand. It is much harder for people to see relevance in something that is not communicated in their own language. They give up trying to understand it. Like I said, you will. This becomes a barrier to the gospel message. Yes, it does. Again, the theme of this week's chapter. Okay, and this is the bottom part of 26, our last page. But don't forget, we'll still have some questions. We're almost there. Another consequence of not taking the time and effort to translate the scriptures into the vernacular or common language is postulated by Moffat. So postulated is like theorized. He states that it gave the impression that the Christians in Persia and Byzantine Syria were culturally insensitive or racially prejudiced against Arabs. He notes that missionaries from the same Asian churches had already translated the Bible into Syriac, Chinese, and less familiar Asian tribal languages, but had made no attempt to translate the scriptures into Arabic. So he's saying they're at fault because they didn't even try to translate the Bible into Arabic. This action, or rather inaction, right? They didn't do anything, they didn't attempt anything, gives the impression of prejudice, whether or not it was present. So they can't prove it, but by them not trying, it gives the impression or makes people think of the prejudice. Possibility. Today, there are still some languages without a Bible translation. There are small groups of people, mostly with an oral culture. But are we giving that same impression of prejudice by forcing people to learn a language that is not their own so they can understand a Bible? So that's a question to you, the students. If a main pillar of the church creates a stumbling stone, or we say block, for people, then we are doing a disservice or not helping to the gospel. Since language is constantly changing, accurate, updated translations of the scriptures in the vernacular of a culture are crucial, very, very important to the message of Christ and the health or long life of the church. Okay, so that brings me to the bottom of 26. That's it for our reading this week. Yay, I'm sure we're happy. Let me proceed to the whiteboard. Uh-oh, not nice. Thank God. Okay, I went into the darkness there. I went to the outer limits. Okay, whiteboard it is. Let me make my marking here. So we've finished reading of 26. Now we got to go to the last questions of the week. Question 11. Wow, I thought I gave you, well, I've given you usually till 16, so I'm actually giving you less. But it's still more than what I thought. What becomes a barrier, right? A stopping point in the gospel message. What would possibly stop the spreading of the gospel? So it's stated here. Stretch. Can I do it all the way? Yes. Okay, I still haven't got that phone call from the students. I thought Alex would call me, but I guess not. So I guess we won't do 10 more questions. So this will be the last question for the week. Our final question. Updated means now. Updated translations of the scriptures is crucial to what? Right? So the answer might have 2 points, might not be just one. Let me stretch this. Okay, so let me give you a few to answer those. Make my markings. I've answered the questions, or given the questions now. For 26, we finished the reading. Okay. So the next time I'll talk to you will be after Halloween, so hopefully everybody has a good Halloween, gets a lot of candy, not get in trouble, wears a different kind of mask, things like that, and enjoy yourself. As for me, I don't know what I'm going to do. They might not let me out on the street. They might. I've had students tell me, teacher, you don't have to buy a mask. You already wear one. Huh? That's not nice. Okay. Ready for me to grab the eraser? I think that's enough time. All right, repeating 11, what becomes a barrier or something that will stop possibly the message of the gospel? Okay. 12, updated translations, which means continuing up till now, the present time, is crucial to what? And like I said, there's probably 2 points to this answer. Okay, thank you. So that's it for this week. Let me hit the stop share. If you stayed this long, you'll see me one last time. Hey, okay. So I'm ending it for today. I will talk to you next week. Have a good Halloween. All right. Get a lot of candy. Bye-bye.